Good evening here in New York. This is Joshua Walker from Japan Society. Today is the perfect day, both in terms of weather, the beauty outside, the way in which it feels like the world is coming back to normal here in New York. And I can't think of a better topic to be discussing tonight with our business and policy program than sustainability at the forefront. We're going to get a chance to talk to global Japanese companies and about their initiatives directly related to SDGs. We have the perfect moderator tonight, along with a great lineup. Let me turn it over to Howard Lee. He's the Vice President of Environmental and Social Risk Management for Citi. And before that, he was actually the former manager for the sustainable finance of the UN Global Compact. So I can't think of a better moderator for today. Howard, let me turn it over to you and your all-star panel you have for tonight.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction, Joshua-san. To all our guests tonight, good evening from here in the US, and ohayo gozaimasu to all of you watching this in Japan. It's a pleasure to welcome you all today to discuss the recent trends in corporate sustainability and how Japanese companies are doing their part to contribute to a more sustainable world. As Joshua-san mentioned, my name is Howard Lee, and I will be your moderator for this discussion. In my day job, I'm vice president at Citibank, Citigroup, where we do environmental social risk management, and we work with our institutional clients around the world on ESG issues in finance. As he mentioned, I also used to work for the United Nations, and so sustainability and the SDGs is a topic that I'm hugely passionate about. Today, make no mistake, we are faced with one of the biggest challenges in human history. Tackling climate change and achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals will require collective effort beyond anything our society has ever achieved. The stakes are high. If we succeed, we'll unlock a sustainable, equitable future with incredible opportunities for us, our children, and our grandchildren. In order to do that, we need all of us to learn from what others are doing, to understand the trends that are going on in the world, the environmental, the social trends that are going on in the world, and challenge each other to be more ambitious on sustainability. This is why this discussion today is such an important one to have, and I hope all of you will continue having these discussions after the webinar, both at home and at work. Now, for decades, certainly throughout my entire lifetime, companies, academics, international observers, even fashion designers have looked to Japan to find the latest trends. And there's a lot to learn. Japan currently ranks 15th out of 162 countries for their progress on the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals, according to the SDG report of 2019. Japan's most powerful business lobby, the Kaidenren, the Japanese Business Federation, has created a new concept, Society 5.0, to achieve the SDGs. Imagine if the Business Roundtable in the US came up with a similar concept, we'd all be raving about it. In terms of finance, Japan has made huge steps towards aligning with sustainable investing and sustainable finance, with major banks and investors like GPIF embracing the environmental, social, and governance issues and taking an active role in engaging with portfolio companies on sustainability topics. And today we're going to talk to three amazing companies who are all doing incredible work in the sustainability space. And they have operations all around the world. They manage globally, and they're addressing sustainability and the SDGs at all levels of those organizations. So it is my incredible pleasure to introduce our four speakers today. First up is David Calabrese, who's Senior Vice President of Government Affairs and head of the Washington, D.C. office at Daikin, US. Jean-Emmanuel Schein, who is Global Director for Sustainability at Uniqlo USA. Yumi Otsuka, who is Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at Toyota. And Jill Pratt, who is Chief Scientist at Toyota and also Chief Executive Officer of the Toyota Research Institute. I'll hand them over now to each of them to give their presentations, followed by a discussion section and a Q&A session before we close today at 8:15. So David, I think you're up first. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Lee-san, and good evening to everyone. I want to thank the Japan Society for this opportunity. So as was mentioned, what I'd like to talk to you about is Daikin's vision for Sustainable Development Goals. And to those who don't know Daikin, we are a global air conditioning and heating manufacturer with operations all over the world and very significant operations here in North America. So I'm going to be talking about our vision in North America, but also globally. So first of all, I think it's important to understand a little bit about the air conditioning industry globally and the implications for the growth of this industry for sustainable development goals. And really, it's a very strong mantra and a theme of Daikin's business to understand that while growth is important, and our business is selling air conditioning, but also to recognize the environmental impacts of that growth. And what you see on the chart here is that while globally in the industrial world, you have wide acceptance and market penetration of air conditioning products. In many of the developing world, that growth is growing exponentially. And while that's good for business, of course, it does have an implication for environmental issues and for climate issues. And so we understand that, and as a result, we need to address those implications. And Daikin has some technologies and solutions that we think will and do address those concerns and our obligations, frankly. So with that, as I mentioned, we really believe that while on the one hand, our job is to sell quality products that help consumers and end users live comfortable and productive lives, at the same time, we do have an obligation to the environment, to our climate, to ensure that the technology itself doesn't add to frankly the crisis that we have now in terms of the climate. And so we believe it's important to provide this comfortable air, but also again to recognize those other concerns. Also, I should note that Daikin also is a provider of indoor air quality solutions, and as one might imagine, with the COVID pandemic, it's become a very significant part of what we look at in terms of our next steps and our sustainability goals. So the way that we look at our obligations and the direction that the company is going over the next 10, 20, 30 years is in terms of the value that we provide to people and spaces to ensure that people are healthy, spaces are comfortable, but at the same time, reducing that environmental impact. And there's really three pillars of this, or three themes that I would say of that now. So what I wanted to talk about here are the three pillars of Daikin's approach to SDGs. And at the bottom of the screen here, you can see the UN goals, and above each of these are those themes: value creation for the planet, value creation for cities, and value creation for individuals. First of all, in terms of that value creation for the Earth, what is it that we do to ensure that climate change is not increased because of the products that we sell? How do we mitigate the impact on the climate through our products? Number two is cities, and we have an example of a project we've engaged in New York City, which I think will demonstrate this. How do we ensure that cities, which are densely packed urban areas with sometimes older buildings, how do we ensure that those buildings have energy efficient products, low global warming potential products, but provide comfort? And then finally, value creation for individuals. How do individuals ensure that they have the comfort and the efficiency of the products that they are using? And so with that, we have a broader overarching goal, and that's what we call our environmental vision 2050. And that vision and that direction is to be net greenhouse gas emission neutral by the year 2050. And I'll talk a bit about some of the technologies and solutions that we're doing to get to that ambitious goal, arguably very ambitious goal. So first of all, it's through innovation. And there are the three technologies, three solutions that are identified on the screen here that we see as the pillars of how we're going to address, how we're going to ensure that our sustainable development goals are implemented appropriately. One is inverter-based technology. The other is a low global warming potential refrigerant called R32. And then finally, a heat pump technology. Now, inverter technology is not a new necessarily technology, but it's new in terms of being applied to air conditioning and heating products. If you think of the typical air conditioner in your home, it gets hot in your house, for instance, and the air conditioner turns on. Once it's cooled down, the air conditioner turns off, the house gets hot again, it turns on, and you have these highs and lows, not always very comfortable. An inverter-based air conditioner smooths out those highs and lows, ensuring that if it's not very hot inside, it goes at 3/4 speed or at 1/4 speed. And with that, you get increased comfort, you get a high energy efficiency, less energy usage, so significant cost savings, reliability, and abatement of noise. So it's a very good technology that Daikin has been promoting for many, many years. Now, we've been promoting the technology and selling the technology all over the world for many years, and there's wide acceptance in most parts of the globe, in Asia and Europe. We're really working now towards North America to get North America to better accept inverter-based technologies. That's the first kind of pillar of our efforts in terms of climate and sustainability. The second is the use of a low global warming potential refrigerant. Now, the one part of an air conditioner that is we would describe as kind of the blood or the guts of the air conditioner is the refrigerant. That's the part that actually transfers the heat, allows you to be warm or to be cold, depending upon your needs. R32 is a refrigerant, a next generation refrigerant, that has a much lower impact on the climate than the current refrigerant being used today, which is mentioned on the screen, R410A. As a result of it, it has a significantly lower total life cycle impact. It also is more efficient when used in many air conditioning systems. It can increase the capacity, and importantly, at the end of life, it can be recycled very easily. R32 is a product, a refrigerant that Daikin has been selling globally for many, many years. In fact, we've sold over 28 million air conditioners using R32 over the past many years. And some of our other competitors have sold over 100 million total, so 140 million total. So it's very widely used, very well accepted. Daikin is so committed to R32 that we've actually offered some of our patents for its use. And we've been doing that since 2011 and have had 3 separate offerings of the refrigerant for others to use without payment of any royalty. Lastly, the last technology that Daikin is committed to is heat pump technology. Heat pumps are different in terms of their heating than you would get from a traditional gas furnace. Traditional gas furnace will burn a fossil fuel, natural gas, and heat your home with it. A heat pump uses electricity. And so in the effort to decarbonize, a heat pump is central to that whole effort. Heat pumps can provide significant energy efficiency. Again, decarbonization effect, where you're not burning fossil fuels, and combined with the use of through renewable production of energy, it's the solution really for a decarbonized world. And so it's one of the technologies that Daikin is really supporting very strongly in North America. And in fact, an example of this is a project that we of working with in New York City. And New York City has many old buildings. In this example, this was a 95-year-old building that used old radiator heat, a gas boiler in the basement. It was not very comfortable. The homeowners found that it was either too hot, too cold, not very pleasant, and very energy inefficient. So we added, we worked with another group and retrofitted the building. What we got was, number one, the residents loved it. They were able to customize their heat, their cooling. There was a 20% reduction in energy costs, first of all. And second of all, overall, building greenhouse gas emissions were reduced by 50%. So a really tremendous and significant decrease in the profile of the building in terms of its greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm near the end here of the presentation. I want to, first of all, thank you all for your attention. And I really just want to emphasize that, Daikin really looks at the responsibility we have. We certainly were responsible for providing quality products that provide the comfort that everyone strives for. But at the same time, we recognize we have to be able to develop those technologies that minimize any negative impact on the environment. And so that's a big part of what we're doing. And our sustainability goals, our focus on that, we think is going to drive toward, first of all, Daikin to be a better corporate citizen, but we hope others in the industry as well. So I want to thank again the Society for the opportunity, and I'll turn it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to welcome as our next speaker, and I've introduced you all already, but Jean Shine from Uniqlo.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Again, thank you for the introduction. My name is Jean Shine. I'm a part of the sustainability team, currently the global director at Uniqlo USA, and I oversee both the Uniqlo USA. I look at the EU and report directly to GHQ, and I've been with the company for 25 years. Before I get into our sustainability efforts, I'd like to address a topic that I think many people are thinking about, the recent decision of the Customs and Border Patrol Agency to reject one of our containers from the port in Los Angeles. We're very disappointed in this decision. And as a global company, we're committed to protecting the human rights of everyone in our supply chain. We've done this from day one. And Uniqlo has strong mechanisms in place to identify any potential violations of human and worker rights. All Uniqlo items use only cotton that originates from sustainable sources. This ensures that human rights are safeguarded. And if we find evidence of forced labor or any other human rights abuses at any of our suppliers, we cease to do business with them. In this case, we submitted documentation to the U.S. Customs and Border Protection Agency to demonstrate that our products meet U.S. import requirements. And again, we're very disappointed with this decision. I just wanted to get that into the. So I'm going to start talking about what we do. For starters, our corporate statement is changing clothes, changing conventionalism, and change the world. You can see some milestones here that I will not read, but sustainability is not something new for Uniqlo and Fast Retail, which is the parent company of Uniqlo. We may have called it something else in the past, but it's always been embedded in how and why we do business, and therefore in our products and activities. Today, we do call it sustainability, and it's something that as a company, we're taking more seriously than ever. We're not perfect, and this remains a work in progress. But we have made significant advances in the past few years, as you can see from some of our the results and the recognition from the industry and our peers. What we do, and I think this is important and emblematic of sustainability. We make our main product we call lifewear, and lifewear. You've heard of sportswear, bridal wear, formal wear, active wear. What we make is lifewear. Lifewear is clothing designed to make everyone's life better. Simple, high quality, everyday clothing with a sense of practical beauty, ingenious in detail, and thought with life needs in mind, and always evolving. So fundamentally, our product, we believe, is sustainable. And to produce lifewear and sell it, we consider sustainability every step of our business, in every node in the supply chain. We sell every single piece of clothing we produce, and we provide the opportunity for a second life to each piece through our store-based Uniqlo program, our take-back program, which has been around before any of the other take-back programs in our sector. We've created a business model to produce only as much clothing as is needed from our customers. We do not produce excess, and we do not make disposable clothing. And although we do not use the SDGs as a formal or explicit framework for our actions and policies, I hope that by the end of this presentation, we'll realize that they're quite deeply embedded in our philosophy and our actions. And if I had to pick two that best represent our business, it would be goals 12, responsible consumption and production, and goal 13, climate action. So I'll move to the next one. So it is like Daikin, we have a framework. We have 3 pillars: people, planet, and society. And underlying all of that is our embrace of diversity and inclusion in our hiring, the design process, our communication, and our social actions. Is this special or extraordinary? Perhaps not on the surface, but what is special is our execution and how we must ensure that this is not a side business, but a fundamental part of our work. Yes, we have goals, we have policies, internal and external ones, such as net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, sustainable procurement of raw materials, effective use of resources, and a zero waste approach to store operations and production. But I would like to share some examples that you may not be completely aware of. I've organized these by pillar, but in most cases, similar to the SDGs, it's not just one pillar, they are intersectional in nature. So this is something you may not be aware of, but we have a social business that is based in Bangladesh that we founded over 10 years ago in collaboration with Professor Mohammed Yunus, the Nobel Prize winner for his work in microfinance. In Dhaka, we have 17 stores providing employment and meaningful career opportunities for hundreds of people, especially for women. Our goal is to be the #1 in Bangladesh, and our business continues to increase, and we reinvest our profits in the business and support local communities. You can see it's quite a sophisticated business. You see a storefront, our Instagram, and our webpage, a recent one. That's one example you may not be aware of. Next, we have an important partnership with UN Women, with whom we started a pilot program to support women at the bottom of in our supply chain that are quote unquote ordinary workers, and to support them with the skills to become managers. And this has proved to be a successful pilot program that we intend to roll out to other factories. As you may know, women make up 60% of the employees in our sector, the textile industry. Another example, which we're all very proud of, is our Uniqlo program. This is not new again. It's one of the first take back programs. It started in 2006, and we have donated to date 41 million pieces of clothing to 75 countries with our global partner, UNHCR. But what is new is 2 years ago, we started our first garment-to-garment recycling with our partner, Industries, where we invited our customers to donate to bring in their gently or very used, even if they're ripped apart, plenty of holes, Uniqlo down jackets. We took those, we collected over 780,000 since the inception of the program, and now it's a global program. And the feathers were extracted, refurbished, and reused to make new garments that you can see on the right side. So on the one hand, we're focused on enhancing our circular program, and then we continue to donate our other clothing and in support of people in need, such as refugees, and in other locations, just people in need, such as in New York City, the Department of Homeless Services. And I won't go into detail about our COVID response. I think all companies, especially Japanese companies, did an amazing job, and we have a history of taking action in disasters, and the pandemic is no exception to this. And globally, we distributed and donated tens of millions of masks, pieces of clothing, and cash. What you may not know is in the United States, I did oversee a program where we distributed 2.2 million single-use masks 1 year ago at peak COVID in New York State, New Jersey, supporting the state directly, the police department, the New York City Parks Department, and many other emergency and frontline workers. And in addition to what we do globally, we do many things locally. And here's an example of one of our urgent responses in the United States that you may not be aware of. You may recall Texas was battered by unusual weather in March that pretty much crippled much of the state of Texas for days. Our CEO, Mr. Yanai, saw this, I was amazed by the images, the horrific images on CNN. We got voices from our staff and from our customers. What are you doing? So we quickly took action and mobilized and sent a tractor trailer truck full of new and gently used clothing together with masks to an NGO that I sourced there. And we assembled about 5,000 quote unquote lifer bundles, these bags that you can see here, and distributed them to the people in most need throughout the city of Austin with the help of 200 volunteers. So I'm not going to go into detail with some other examples of our local engagement, which is very important to us as a company. We call it Gay, and it's part of every store. Every store is mandated to engage with the local community in a meaningful way using our stores and our staff to support the local community. We do this with, this is not nice, this is typical behavior for Uniqlo. And lastly, I would really like to thank you for your attention. And before I leave, I just want you to let you know that actually our sustainability actions are just beginning. And in some respects, we may be seen a little behind our peers in terms of disclosure or target setting, but this is going to change in the very near future as we make some fundamental changes in our approach. Sustainability is a team sport, and for it to be fully embraced and integrated into our brand and business, which there's no other way to maximize impact, everyone must take responsibility and one must actively engage all of our stakeholders, which is why it's been so meaningful for me to be able to share our efforts this evening with you. And I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jean. And I apologize, I'm butchering everybody's names tonight, but hopefully I break the streak now. Next up, we have two distinguished colleagues from Toyota. We have Yumi Otsuka, who's the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at Toyota Motor Corporation, and we have Gil Pratt, who is the Chief Scientist at Toyota and Chief Executive Officer at Toyota Research Institute. So I'll hand it over to you all next.
Thank you, Lee-san. So it's our pleasure to be with you this evening. My name is Yumi Otsuka, and then as introduced, I am the Deputy Chief Sustainability Officer at Toyota Motor Corporation. I'm joined by colleague, Dr. Gil Pratt, who is our Chief Scientist and also CEO of Toyota Research Institute, and an Executive Advisor at our Central R&D Laboratory. As co-presenters, we want to share with you two main ideas. I will start by discussing Toyota's approach to action on SDGs, and then turn the presentation over to Dr. Pratt, who will discuss the science behind our carbon reduction strategy. Today, Toyota is best known as world's leading car manufacturer. However, our industry is changing. Our President Akio Toyoda has described these changes as a once-in-a-century period of profound transformation, a time when we need to reimagine the needs of society and our planet. And so as our world becomes more connected, automated, shared, and electrified, we must change too. From a car company to a mobility company, addressing the full mobility needs of our changing society. This challenge is one we embrace fully because it aligns with the central Toyota philosophy to serve society and to bring happiness to all people. This thinking also underpins our work to address the Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs give the world a blueprint. They lay out very clearly what the community of nations expects of us and where we need to change and adapt to best serve society. At Toyota, we use this blueprint to identify opportunities and areas where we can grow and contribute. And we organize our work into three main categories: our people, our processes, and our products. Let me start with our people. Since the tragedy of March 11th a decade ago to the current COVID-19 pandemic, Toyota has been about helping people. In response to the great earthquake and tsunami, rather than making a one-time financial donation for relief, Toyota decided to contribute by creating employment, gaining earnings, and paying taxes through the car manufacturing business. The same is true in our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are very proud to say that at Toyota, not one single employee was let go during the deep economic uncertainty of this global crisis. And in fact, the resilience of our people is what has brought us through this disaster and returned great value to our stakeholders and our communities. We will continue to provide ever-increasing opportunities for our diverse workforce of over 360,000 people around the world. When it comes to our processes, we are constantly evaluating our own footprint, striving to improve our manufacturing practices across our 40 plants in the United States. We are increasing our renewable energy usage, improving air and water quality inside and outside the plant. In many of our facilities, we are even planting pollinator gardens to help nature around. And finally, for our products, this is where we see our biggest opportunity to contribute and to lead in the category of climate action and carbon reduction. In a moment, I will turn over the presentation to Dr. Pratt, who will discuss the details. But I would like to emphasize that Toyota is 100% committed to our global goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. I know we can achieve this goal, and I look forward to being part of that journey with partners like the Japan Society and each of you. As our President Akio Toyoda likes to remind us, regarding the SDGs, every one of us is living on the same planet, and we can leave no one behind. Now, let me turn over the presentation to Dr. Pratt to tell you more about the science behind our innovations.
Thank you very much, Otsuka-san. I'm so pleased to be with you here this evening, with all of you. And I wanted to start by sharing with you the latest information that we have from the scientific community in regards to carbon and climate change. But before I do so, let me just get an audio confirmation that the slides are coming through. So can someone say if they're working?
Yes.
Looks
Yes?
good to me.
Okay, great. Okay. So let's take a look at this. Science tells us that we have a narrow window of 29 years to achieve significant carbon reduction if we are to keep the planet's temperature rise to less than 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. This graph here, which is from the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, shows that it's vital that we work to achieve net zero carbon by 2050. At Toyota, we believe in an approach that maximizes the chance that we will reach this goal by offering not one, but many ways to do so. Now, why is this so important? It's because in the US, the transportation sector generates the largest share of greenhouse gas emissions, which is close to 30%. Now, we've responded to this issue by creating the Toyota Environmental Challenge to ensure that we'll reduce CO2 emissions to zero by 2050. This means achieving zero CO2 emissions in all processes throughout the life cycle of manufacturing, transporting, operating, fueling or charging, and recycling or disposing of vehicles. It's not just about the miles per gallon when you drive the car. We also embrace an approach that is based on diversity. We believe fully in electrification of vehicle drivetrains, and we believe that we have to offer types of electric drivetrains that best match the circumstances that vary by country and by customer. In other words, because countries and customers are diverse, our drivetrains have to be diverse as well. So we will offer hybrid vehicles, plug-in hybrid vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and fuel cell vehicles so that everyone, every single person, regardless of their circumstance, can contribute as best they can to decarbonizing our planet. And we're innovating every day to bring fully battery electric vehicles to the market. The vehicle that you see here is the Toyota BZ4X. The BZ stands for Beyond Zero, which was revealed last month at the Shanghai Auto Show. It's the first in a long line of battery electric vehicles that Toyota will roll out over the next few years. In fact, we have 15 battery electric vehicles that we plan to introduce globally by 2025 to add to our portfolio of diverse drivetrains already on the market. So in our drive to electrification, we have to take into account many things. And here's one thing that some people don't really study that deeply, but I think it's very important. We have to take into account that battery technology is still developing. The production of every battery cell consumes natural resources and also emits significant carbon into the atmosphere. Now, presently, it's costly to recycle lithium batteries, and both raw materials and production are going to be limited for some time. And what this teaches us as engineers, as scientists, is that we need to be smart about how we best deploy battery production output while we improve batteries over time. So the question is, how do we maximize the benefit of the limited number of battery cells that the world is currently able to produce? There are really two alternatives. On the left-hand side, we see what happens if we put all batteries into fully battery electric vehicles. If you do this, you get cars that have long range, but because the average US commute is only around 30 miles round trip, and in other parts of the world, the commutes are even shorter, most of the battery capacity that's invested in large range battery electric vehicles will be wasted most of the time. Now, on the right, whoops, let me click here. Yeah, on the right-hand side is how Toyota thinks that it should be done. By deploying the world's precious battery supply into a diversity of vehicle types, we believe that we can better adapt to diverse customer needs, and we can best help every customer, regardless of circumstance, to reduce carbon as much as possible and have the greatest impact on climate change. So in summary, Toyota is keen to do our part to reduce global carbon emissions and lead in this area where we have real solutions today with even better technologies tomorrow. And I want to state clearly that our common enemy is carbon, and our goal of carbon neutrality by 2050 will be best achieved not by choosing one solution, but rather by embracing a diversity of approaches that helps every customer maximize their ability to solve climate change. And we believe that this way of thinking is based on sound science and research, and I look forward very much to answering your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Gil, and actually thank you for all our panelists for their presentations today. I picked up on some very interesting tips. One of the great things that I heard from all of you, firstly, was that sustainability is an opportunity for all of your companies and your industries. I think that's a very refreshing thing to hear. And secondly, it was also very refreshing to hear that you're all looking not just at the direct environmental element of sustainability, which Joshua mentioned is often the most emphasized at the beginning in his opening remarks, but you're all looking at the broader stakeholder implications of this shift to sustainability, which is something that I want to dig into a little more for our next section, which is going to be a bit more of an organic discussion between our panelists. Now in this next section, like I said, I want this to be a free-flowing discussion for all of you. So feel free to jump in and answer. I'll direct the questions, maybe to one person to start, but then feel free to have discussion, and then I'll bring it to a close and hop into some user submitted Q&A after that. So maybe I'll start first with a question that's perhaps targeted more at our US audience. What is Japan's stance on sustainability and the SDGs in your view? Which area of sustainability has been most enthusiastically adopted? Which area of the sustainability or SDG agenda has been most enthusiastically adopted, do you think? So I'll start with David on this one.
Thank you for the question. So I think that one of the areas where Daikin has focused much of our efforts is on energy efficiency, and the energy efficiency in Japan, the Japanese government has put a really strong emphasis on ensuring that the energy efficiency is a big part of the products that are sold there. And as a result, Daikin has built into our DNA the fact that we need to produce high energy efficient products. And so that's where we've been trying to take to other regions, especially to North America. So I think that a very significant and earnest goal of Japanese policy has been to increase the energy efficiency of products like air conditioning and other appliances. So that's one area. There are several others, but I'll let others in the group respond. But I think that's one that we see as a very significant aspect of policy that's being applied now in different regions.
Any other comments, Toyota or Uniqlo?
Yeah, thank you. So I think, yeah, as you said, many Japanese companies enthusiastically embrace the concept of SDGs, but I think it's not new to us. So there is an old wisdom among Japanese business people. In Japanese, sanpoyoshi, which means the three parties, I mean sellers, buyers, and society, should satisfy the business result. So you see the concept is very similar to the multi-stakeholder capitalism for the triple bottom line of SDGs. And as for Toyota, I think I touch upon our philosophy, which comes from our founders who started our business not to make money, but to serve society or to help others. So I'd like to have some comments from Gil about that SDGs and Toyota.
Sure. I would be glad to speak about it and maybe add on top of what's been said so far with a comment about kind of a culture in Japan, which is particularly strong, I think, in several companies, but particularly in Toyota, which is of eliminating waste, muda. And the Toyota production system, of course, grew out of very difficult times in Japan when no one could afford to waste. But a result of that is this terrific alignment, I think, between our culture, both in Toyota and in other companies in Japan, and the SDGs. So I think that there's a natural harmony that's there. And it's about not wasting many things, not only material goods, but not creating waste in the environment, and also not wasting human potential. So I happen to feel that actually this is an area where both Japan and the United States can lead very strongly.
I can speak from the Uniqlo perspective. Sustainability was not a word we commonly used inside our company until quite recently. We had other words that we used, but from day one, I think in Japanese culture, again, I'm not Japanese, but the high standards from a quality perspective. And with those high standards comes the expectation of a product that's going to last a long time and a respect for an item as something that you treasure. And then perhaps when it's no longer useful, then you find a second life for it, which I think has become more and more common in Japan. But this has been embedded in how we think about sustainability from the beginning before we even knew that word. So that the high expectations of quality, it made it an easy shift for us towards recycling, towards higher standards and durability. So it was really it wasn't a big step for us to to change our mindset to a construct that is sometimes more Western in nature.
Thank you so much. That's fantastic. I love that quote, Atsuka-san, not to make money, but to serve society. I'm a big proponent of this, and you know, I'm a firm believer that if you find a business model that society finds valuable, you'll make money. And these days, a lot of consumers we see, you know, we had a study just a couple of days ago from the WWF that shows you know, consumers are increasingly turning to sustainable products because that's a strong preference. Especially for millennials and younger folks. So that's a great insight. Now, you all mentioned some interesting products and processes at your companies to support sustainability in your presentations earlier. And I think one of the pivotal issues we see in the sustainability discourse is this need for new innovations and technologies to achieve the SDGs. And obviously, we all know Japanese companies have a long history of technological innovation. And spreading those innovations to different sectors, different industries, different countries, and so on. So what are some of the most promising innovations at your company that you think will help achieve the SDGs? Maybe I'll direct this first to Atsuka-san and Gil, since he's our resident technologist.
Yeah.
So I would be glad to answer. So that point of view that I spoke about in our talk, where we think that every battery that is produced is precious, is a very kind of scientific and technical point of view and an economic point of view as well. And it's one where, you know, we recognize that we're actually investing in the future with every battery cell that we make. There's even a term for it called carbon return on investment. So when you make a battery cell, of course, you expend energy, it expends cost, of course, but it also generates some carbon that's let out into the atmosphere. And so you're really saying, okay, I'm going to spend a little bit now, but I hope for a greater return later. And so then the question is, how can you maximize that return? And that's where our whole kind of thinking about the right technical strategy to sort of maximize impact on climate change and minimize carbon comes from. With regard to technical advancement, we're also using some very recent techniques from artificial intelligence. And we're using them to test every battery cell that's made and then to predict, based on just a couple measurements, how long that battery will last for. How do we know that our investment is actually as good as possible? And based on the results of that, we can then do very quick Kaizen, very quick continuous improvement in the factory to make sure that every battery cell that we make is going to last a long time. And even though we've invested so much into it, we're going to get the most back. So that's just one of many examples.
If I could add to the question on the technological innovation. One of the technologies I didn't mention in my presentation, but is implicated by the three that I did mention, the inverter technology, heat pump, and low global warming potential refrigerants, is a technology called VRF or VRV, variable refrigerant flow technology. And it's a heat pump product, it's an inverter product, and it can use lower global warming potential refrigerants. And it gets to this concept of providing customizable heating and air conditioning for the user. So you can have different rooms of your house with different temperatures, even in a commercial building, different parts of an office, one with heating, one with cooling. So that provides the comfort and customization, but also tremendous energy savings, because you're really just directing the conditioning to the place that it's necessary. And again, using the lower global warming potential refrigerants has a much lower impact on the environment. So this again is a technology widely used in Asia, but now bringing it to the United States, and there's new derivations of that too that we're looking at. So it's something that we really see as the future for this industry, and I think it has multiple benefits for, again, users and the environment.
For Uniqlo, we're a little less tech heavy than our colleagues, the other speakers, but you may be aware of a product that revolutionized the consumer approach to winter called Heat Tech. And this is basically an inner layer, and that revolutionized the way the Japanese population approached winter and to feeling comfortable inside. I think in the past, especially in non-urban areas where central heating was not so common, that the people were not always warm in their entire home. And they were wearing many layers of clothing, and what the clothing we make is always designed with a purpose. And in this case, we partnered with we don't have the technology chops, so we partnered with Toray and some other companies to develop something like Heat Tech. And we also developed sort of Heat Tech's twin for summer, Airism, which we like to call, and Daikin might not like this, but wearable air conditioning, because it's designed to wick moisture away and make the muggy times in Japan bearable and comfortable. So we always apply and think of technology to ways to enhance how people can enjoy daily life and just change their approach to uncomfortable situations.
You know, one of the things that maybe I would like to add, hearing all of the views here, there is a very common theme that I think is here, which is that one size doesn't fit all. If you think about each individual person on planet Earth, and you kind of ask the question, how can each one of those people contribute the most to mitigating climate change? The answer is going to be different for each person. And so I think it's our responsibility as companies making products for many people to basically offer products that give each person that ability to kind of customize the solution that they're going to have that is fitting to their life and that maximizes the contribution from each person despite all of their diverse circumstances.
Thanks for that, Gil. I couldn't agree more. Consumer choice is so important, and even better when they choose something that's a sustainable product or something that's produced sustainably. So thanks so much for that. And Jean, full disclosure, I'm Canadian, and I'm a huge devotee of to Heat Tech. It definitely counts as valuable technology in my own wardrobe. So thanks for bringing that up. And this brings us nicely to our next question, which is in some ways, these sustainability issues that we're talking about are bigger than any one company. And a lot of these are what I'd call, pre-competitive issues, right? You mentioned, John, I think, the collaboration with other firms in developing Heat Tech and other products. Are there any other kind of joint sustainability initiatives that you're pursuing collectively with other companies as partnerships or in joint ventures, things like that? And also, John, you had a great line earlier about how sustainability is a team sport. So I'm going to start with you for this one.
Oh, thank you very much. We are members of some industry-wide organizations, a Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and amongst others. And our industry, the upcoming or foreseeable legislation and regulations that we see coming down the pike in Europe or France are going to require changes in how we behave that we all need to agree upon. And these, so we work with other, our competitors to help, lobby to address the legislation and to make it more realistic and possible for us to adhere to while, having some kind of a win-win situation. So we do work with others, and sustainability, again, is one area where I'm comfortable picking up the phone and calling a colleague at a competitor, and they will speak to me. Whereas perhaps somebody in the finance team or the merchandising department, that is not the case. So this is one area where we can all get along and we all have similar goals. So it's much easier for us to work together, generally speaking.
I can add that one of the challenges in the air conditioning and heating industry is that these technologies, which are terrific in terms of the comfort and the energy efficiency, they can be expensive. I mean, we're talking about significant technology and improvements. And so one of our goals has always been to look at way to ensure that lower income customers can still have access to these technologies. So we do have had joint ventures, and we do have a joint venture with a Chinese firm to help develop some of these products so it can be fully accessed by people of lesser means. And so we think that's a really important way to ensure that it's getting to everyone, the right people into the right hands. So we think that's another way to focus our efforts.
This is Gil here. Maybe I can speak for the Toyota side of this thing. We actually believe in both approaches strongly. We have trade groups and collaborations that we have with other car manufacturers that are our competitors, and we certainly work with them together on issues that are not fundamentally competitive by nature. And I think that this kind of sustainability issue is a great example of one. And we, of course, work together to try to educate the public and also policymakers as well. The other thing is that, as in the case with the air conditioning example, we also work together with other companies. So one that I happen to be very familiar with is our work together with Panasonic on batteries. There's a company called Prime Planet Energy and Solutions, PPES, that we work together with in order to develop better batteries. And the AI techniques I mentioned to you before, which can be used to predict battery life, can also be used to improve the production efficiency of the batteries that we do and that we work on together. So I think that both approaches are very important.
Thank you so much. Atsuka-san, I didn't know if you had anything else to add, or otherwise I'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, please move on to the next question.
Okay.
Thank you.
No problem. Fantastic. So for the next one, I'm going to introduce a quick Peter Drucker quote, who many of you know. He's known for his academic work on Japanese business practices for many decades. And one of his quotes is, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." Right? So one of the important things to note is sustainability isn't just a strategy or a product. It's also a set of culture and values about how you run the business, right? So, and this question is to all of you: how does your company integrate SDGs or sustainability generally across the company in the way that you do business and your business values and your business mission? And also linked to that, and maybe this is the more practical point for our listeners today. How do you make the case internally for investing in sustainability to your senior management or to your stakeholders? And maybe Atsuka-san, I'll start with you because you're the Chief Sustainability Officer. So you set the best example.
Thank you. Yeah, as you said before, I think we believe so. Working on SDGs can along together with profitability. I mean, so. What I say, we can be doing well by doing right. So the working on SDGs makes us more competitive and then ultimately profitable, I think. And the good example of that is our first generation Prius. When we started selling the Prius, so many people said Toyota was crazy, but it turned out weird, not. So at the beginning, the Prius was not profitable at all, but it played very important role for us to move the market into the more environmental friendly, the cleaner market. And then the concept was gradually accepted by more and more customers over the years. And now we have many loyal customers and then profit on our brands, I think. And then we can say the same thing is true for our FCV Mirai, the fuel cell vehicle. And we are very proud to lead the industry again in offering the diverse technologies to reduce carbon. Thank you.
I can answer the question next. I think you mentioned the two questions about how this gets into the culture and then how do you make it work as a business model. I think that first of all, and I may have mentioned this in my presentation, but really our culture in Daikin, and this comes from the top, from the chairman and the leadership team, is that that we truly believe that this is a responsibility that Daikin has. And so as that direction makes its way down to all the managers in the company, we develop the products, that theme is always present. And so it's a really important part of our goals and our direction, I guess you might say. And in terms of making SDGs a good business model, I think that, many consumers in North America really are coming around to the concept of they really want to purchase products that they feel good about, that has a positive impact or doesn't have a overly negative impact. And so when you sell the product in that way, that it has those significant energy savings, which in addition to saving you money is going to help save energy use, and using a refrigerant that has less of a climate impact, I do think people want to purchase that, and so that's good business, frankly. So we see it as really it's a win-win situation when you're selling those types of technologies.
From the Uniqlo perspective, there are two things I just wanted to mention. Again, like the other people on the call, it comes from the top. In our case, from our chairman, and we, as I said, we make lifewear, and whenever we make something, it really has to respond to a need, and it has to have a purpose. If it doesn't have either of those things, it doesn't become a product. That's for starters. So that's fundamental, I believe. And regarding making the business case, there isn't always a business case, we've found. There's in our industry especially, there remains a premium on the raw materials. However, there are other areas where we have found savings. For instance, in a shift from plastic to paper, and then perhaps a bag charge, which ultimately will reduce the total consumption and the cost, or in the case of renewable energy procurement, where we will enter into a PPA, and ultimately the cost of energy is dramatically reduced for us. So it balances, we're seeking a balance. It's not always going to be a financial win, but overall, I think we seek to justify perhaps a premium in some cases with the savings we may find elsewhere.
Thanks for that, John. I think it's an important reminder that it's also about cost reductions as well as the opportunities there are to be gained from being more sustainable. So I think with that, we have to hop over to the audience questions and sections. So thank you all for your responses. I'll now go through the live chat and see look for some questions that I'll direct to you all. The first one I want to address is from Suzanne Basala. And this speaks to one of the questions we had in the discussion earlier, which is what challenges do you face in bringing sustainable technologies and innovations specifically to the US market? Again, maybe I'll start with you, Gil.
Sure. The US market is different. Let me talk about a somewhat unusual sustainability issue, which is automated driving technology. So it turns out that if you add automated driving technology to a car, you can make it not only safer, but actually you can get it to consume less fuel. The effect is not huge, but it's significant. And there are ways that this kind of technology can actually sort of drive the car with a view towards sustainability a little better. And if you want to think about that, imagine that you're headed onto a highway, but there's a traffic jam ahead, and you have a choice to take a road that might have less of a traffic jam and less stop and go driving, not necessarily to get you there faster, but to get you there more smoothly. There are all kinds of effects like that that actually can combine for that. Now, the roads in the US are different than roads in other parts of the world. And so in this particular case, we have to tune our AI algorithms to actually have different characteristics to match the different geography in different parts of the world. So that's just yet another example of how we have to take diverse approaches to match the diverse circumstances that different people find themselves in. And so it's not only for direct consumption of energy that turns into carbon, but actually that roads in different parts of the world are different, traffic is different, and how people use their cars is quite different also.
Fantastic. And maybe I'll direct it to David next, because I think you mentioned in your presentation, building projects in New York and so on.
Yes, thank you, Howard. So one of the challenges for an air conditioning manufacturer coming to the U.S. is, first of all, is the way that buildings and homes have traditionally been designed in North America. And there's a variety of reasons for that, but they typically have used what we call a ducted type system. And you have a central air conditioner with ductwork going through the house. The model in Asia and Europe is a ductless system where you have units where refrigerant goes to individual units and individual rooms, which is a more efficient way to deliver air conditioning and heating, and a way to get better comfort. So one of the challenges we've had, and it's the perceptions are changing, I think, and this is what was actually installed in the building that I mentioned, that you mentioned in New York City, is a ductless system. And once it was installed, the response from the homeowners was tremendous. They loved it, but it's just not something they had seen before. They were used to. It just looked different. And so I think we're definitely getting there, and we're moving in the direction of this new technology. But it's convincing people that this technology is good, even though it looks very different, and also dealing with some of the structural issues that are not insurmountable, but they are different than what you'll find in buildings and homes in other parts of the world.
Sense. Jean, do you have anything else to add?
I'll be very brief, but we've seen, hello, so nice to see your name, Suzanne, but we've seen a little bit the opposite, that from a consumer perspective, at least consumers in our Western markets, the United States, are much more demanding or interested in having sustainable products from clothing, that is, than in Japan, where we haven't heard those voices as much. And when we've looked at the consumer surveys in our sector, often it is Japan is the least sensitive or least interested in when the question is how likely are you to purchase sustainable clothing. In the case of Japan, often that is the lowest amongst most of the nations surveyed. So we see sort of an opposite issue. And the challenge is to raise some sensitivity of the consumer preferences to to GHQ.
Makes a lot of sense. So there's both kind of cultural issues and also kind of more technical challenges there, it sounds like. So for the next question, I want to get into one that's actually very dear to my heart, and I wanted to ask this earlier in the discussion as well. So there's a big difference, for our listeners out there. I think we have to make this crucial distinction between corporate sustainability and sustainable development. And while those two things can be related, I think it's important to make that distinction that they're two separate things. Corporate sustainability broadly talks about the sustainability of the business, and sustainable development is obviously the impacts on broader society and particularly developing countries. And so this question is from Dwayne Rice Mason. He asks, how does sustainability of Japanese corporations jive with industrialization and job creation in poor countries? So I think in a nutshell, what is your company doing for sustainable development? If you could elaborate on your footprint in developing countries, I think that'd be fantastic. And maybe, David, I think I'll start with you because, when we talk about climate change, adaptation is such a big part of it. And obviously, air conditioning and cooling is very important in that respect. But I think you also have operations in many countries around the world. So I think I'll start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it's a good question, and there are really two ways I think I would answer the question. And first of all, it goes back to the concept of how do you get these highly energy efficient, low global warming potential systems into the hands of people in some of the lesser developed countries. And again, they can be sophisticated, they can be pricey, and so we always are looking to ways to design the products so they can be accessible. And we've done that in India. in China. And so really that's one of the ways we think is getting it to those types of groups. The other way that, and this again comes from the top, is that our company believes strongly in local production. So if we're selling in a region, or manufacturing in a certain, or if we're selling a product in a certain country, we want to be manufacturing the product in that country, so we can address the particular issues that may be present there, but also jobs. This is where we would employ the local residents. In the United States, we have over 17,000 employees in various states manufacturing these products. And so we really have a strong commitment to local manufacturing of our products, which we think helps too with in many of these developing countries.
Thanks, David. Gil, John, anyone else want to hop in?
Well, let me ask Otsuka-san maybe to start off, and then I'll go after her. Otsuka-san?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. So Toyota is also doing business over the 170 countries, including developing countries. And I think our primary responsibility is to bring job opportunities and then, economic growth to those communities. But we recognize that is not enough. So as a good corporate citizen, we need to serve society. Most recently, under the COVID-19 influences, we just found our production technologies like Toyota production system is helpful in responding to the crisis. So we turned our focus to producing the emergency supplies like masks and the face shields or the ventilators and other medical stuff in the developing countries where we have plants. And also, we are very proud to collaborate with United Nations to develop and sell the vehicles for refrigerated vaccine transportation, which will be helpful also in improving the vaccine rate usage in developing countries.
And so what I would add to that is, again, this sort of very strong connection, I think, between sustainability and diversity. And even if I limit my focus to just climate change and carbon reduction, the atmosphere around the world, of course, is shared by everyone, no matter where you are. But that's the output side. On the input side, this question of what can each person contribute is dramatically different in different parts of the world. There's tremendous diversity. And so a person who lives in an apartment that has no place to plug in a car will have a different way of maximizing their contribution to sustainability than a person who lives in a country where there is an incredible supply of hydroelectric power, for instance, and plenty of chargers to charge their car up. So I think no matter what the field is, and I'm speaking very narrowly to the car field, but I think this is true almost universally, we have to remember that even though it's one planet, it's not all the same planet, and that every person has a different circumstance based on economics and geography. And we really, if we were to win at this in the best way, to maximize the total effort that's put into sustainability, we have to find a way to customize the solution to each person to let them do the best that they can do.
This is Jean from Uniqlo. This is going to sound a little like a cliche, but we say that we exist to serve society. And yes, we make clothes, but we believe in two things. And I think I showed one example, which is the Grameen Uniqlo case of supporting livelihoods in the developing country. And then we also work with our partners such as the UNHCR in various ways, and UN Women to support livelihoods projects for refugees and then women who may not otherwise advance. And then in all of our Kotenkei projects at the local level, our primary objective is to support job creation. And then internally, retail is, in many countries, is not a very glamorous job. However, as a company, our mission is to make working at Uniqlo in a store a viable career that is going to last more than 6 months. Everyone in a leadership position within Uniqlo in fast retailing started, in most of the cases, as a part-time employee, a seasonal worker. So I think job creation, like the other speakers have mentioned, is really at the core of both our own approach to sustainability and then to development, more generally speaking.
Thanks so much for that, John. And thank you all for joining us here tonight and submitting your questions. I realize we're at time. And like I said at the beginning, I knew this would happen. This is too big and too important a topic to be covered in 1 hour and 15 minutes. But thank you all for joining us. I know we're already 3 minutes over time. And in my defense, I'm only a quarter Japanese, so I'm not that punctual. We still have great questions on hydrogen fuel cells, on CO2 and greenhouse gas measurement, on shareholder engagement. All of these are fantastic questions. And I'm so sorry we don't have time to cover them all today, but I encourage everyone who's watching this to continue this discussion at home or at work with your friends, your family, your colleagues, and show off a little bit of what you learned in this session from our great speakers. And do feel free, obviously, to get in touch with any of our companies if you want to learn more about our sustainability efforts. I'm sure we'd all be happy to engage with you all. And finally, I'd just like to thank all of our panelists today, David, Jean, Gil, Otsuka-san, and of course, Josh, Tomoko, Yuka, Michelle, and the rest of the team at the Japan Society for hosting us today. Josh, I don't know if you want to say any final closing words, but that's it from me.
Thank you so much, Howard, and all the speakers. That was great. I think it's well worth the extra 3 minutes for what you guys have had to say. Thank you, and Otsuka-sama from Japan Society.